Okay, let's discuss Jumanji a little more.
Yep, ramble on. Let's talk about it.
And this is going to have spoilers, so if you don't want your spoilers, cover your ears.
Thorough spoilers. But
Very thorough.
is there that much to spoil about this movie?
Not.
When you walk in, you know what you're going to get.
Yeah, no, that's fair. In the American recut, I was reluctant to kind of share some intricacies that this world had, but
It's a sequel. You know how the world works.
Yeah.
They get sucked into the game. They become characters in Jumanji.
Yeah.
That's the biggest spoiler, arguably, aside from the way it ends.
The one thing they introduced this concept in Jumanji 2 that I kind of liked, where, there's like 6 people.
Where the game's glitchy as fuck.
The game is glitchy as fuck. And, they do kind of like do musical avatars where they kind of switch around with their avatars.
If we're getting into stuff like that, I feel like if there was one thing I wish there was more of, it would be more glitches, because they kind of play with that at first, where like, we got random characters, we didn't get to choose, what's wrong with the game? But then it's never really glitchy in the game. Like, I wish that was something that came up at some point. Like, maybe the villain was a corrupted character in the game or something like that, and his weakness wasn't working right.
This is just like in the first movie. The villain didn't have a whole lot of limelight to him. It was just...
the main story of the game itself in general is very utilitarian. It's supposed to be just basic.
It is.
I was fine with that.
Yeah.
And I generally actually kind of found a lot of the stuff, like the video gaming stuff, a lot of fun. Like, usually movies like this that you see where it takes place in a video game world, you get those moments where it's like, where they talk about, like, they clearly don't play video games themselves, so it's things like, well, you see, I had the highest reaction time, that's why I'm the best at this game. Or like, my god, look at him go, he's nailing every single goal, it's incredible. Like, you always get these moments in game movies. With this one, it felt like this was more like they had rigid rules, and they actually had some fun little Easter eggs and tiny little intricacies that are fun with games. Like
that's a good point.
All the characters who are like strength based or based on that always do the superhero landing when they respawn. Mm-hmm. The characters who are supposed to be very clumsy and like high int based always fall over and roll around when they respawn. It's little things like that are a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, no, and they did the. It's nearly identical to the first movie, except I kind of preferred the antics in that movie a little more, mainly because one of the females playing a fat geographer. Yeah, that was hilarious.
I still enjoyed Jack Black in this. I enjoyed Dwayne Johnson, but he doesn't have that much of a range, unfortunately.
No.
He has moments where when he's like doing a lot of stunts and having to act at the same time, he kind of loses his character a bit.
Yeah. Yes, I kind of picked that up. Awkwafina
did surprisingly well for it, considering that she doesn't have a long history behind her.
That kind of surprised me, because she did kind of capture...
Kevin Hart also surprised me a bit. He was surprisingly good at capturing 2 very different characters.
I thought he was alright. Well, hang on, he captured Danny Glover's character, and who else did he catch?
He was also Fringe.
Oh, yeah, just like he was in the first movie.
Yeah. And then the big other thing that happens in this movie is they have the lightning water, where when you get in it, you can switch bodies. And they basically use that twice. Once to establish it, and then once to kind of have the badass moment where they're all back in their original bodies. And it's like, the pros are back in the bodies they're used to. It's like, okay, sure.
Speaking of switching bodies, so let me get your input on this. What was your take on Danny Glover's character Milo becoming a Pegasus and just ultimately accepting his fate as a 8-bit Pegasus?
I felt like, in general, that whole plotline between Ollie and Eddie, where they kind of go into like this little business dealing, how they had this falling out because he sold the business and wanted to retire, but Eddie wasn't ready to retire. I felt like that was kind of a very nice B story to this movie. I really liked every time they would go back to them and kind of have to hash out this old argument, them kind of never really realizing how the game world works, and like Ollie wanting to like have a fist fight with a guy who is like God mode strength checks.
No, that whole geriatric response of playing video games.
Like, and they just don't get the rules of it.
No.
So they try and settle things in the way that's like wrong for the game. But I found them legitimately charming. I loved a lot of their story stuff. I found them way more interesting than the main cast in general.
I enjoyed that concept. I kind of went in blind with this movie as well, but I did kind of hear, I caught a glimpse of Danny DeVito and Danny Glover in the trailer that I passed through, and I thought my interpretation was I thought it was going to be a whole new cast, but everyone was a senior citizen.
Well, I mean, but part of it was how they had to establish going into the game, which was just one person being like, I'm tired of this fake real world. I want to be my brave guy again. And like during a hissy fit, his story generally kind of sucks.
It does. Yep. I was kind of surprised they brought back the original cast.
Which, I mean, it's fine. Whatever. Like, you had to get it somehow. You had to bring back the major characters. Fine.
Did you, though? I guess.
It was fine. But I liked Ollie and Eddie a lot. I liked their story. It felt like the movie was more concerned with them than with anything going on with the other characters. Like, they got barely any screen time for being the main cast of the previous movie.
Right. I was...
Like, they were kind of just in town for a reunion, and that's about all the backstory we get, which is fine. It's good enough.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I was just more... I was really just anticipating the whole main characters just being geriatric gamers, which would have been hilarious. But like you said, I mean, they have to...
You get a lot of interplay with different things. You know, the veterans having to use new characters, the veterans kind of thinking they're hot shit when they're kind of just okay. The geriatric people kind of sliding into their roles better than they would expect, but also worse than you would expect at the same time.
Right.
Like Kevin Hart is a zoologist and having just these long rambling, going down the list talking about every single.
That parody of Danny Glover talking so slow.
I like that. I like that a lot. Where he'll get to the important point after someone's dead every time.
No, Kevin's take on Milo was delightful. I like that.
And of course, Milo never realizing the backpack thing and how overpowered that is.
Right.
I liked a lot of that. So that was a lot of fun. And Danny DeVito, you have just The Rock with kind of a fake Brooklyn accent. You have him just willing to just jump into every single fight he can get into. It's a lot of fun.
I had mixed feelings about that. In some ways, it was kind of painful to watch, but all the same,
he is just the team's retarded barbarian.
It was. Just how he just kept starting fights and slobber knocking people in the walls.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, if I have a character who's basically just every single other says crank down so you can crank up strength higher, I would probably do the same thing a little bit. You know,
And his one weakness was Switchblade.
My entire point is fighting, and I can fight.
Yeah.
The Switchblade thing, I feel like that was kind of underrepresented in the movie. It was just a gimmick to get them to lose a life.
Oh yeah, no, that was totally just a gimmick.
Which, I mean, if you gotta get the characters there, fine, but it was a little bit cheap.
It was.
But
I agree.
A lot of these points get excused by the video game plot stuff, though, because I feel like this is a better Ready Player One than Ready Player One was.
I agree. No, and Jumanji 1 was definitely a better rendition of that. I would like to kind of discuss all three Jumanjis all together because,
4.
There's fucking 4 of these now? What?
There is the 1980s Jumanji, the 2003 Jumanji, that was terrible, the 2016 Jumanji, which was the video game one.
Yeah, that one I saw. Okay, hold up. There was a 2003 Jumanji?
Oh, yeah, the one with the new kids where they bring the game to the new world. It was basically a remake of the original Jumanji.
What the fuck? Hang on a minute. That was...
Oh, it was terrible, yeah. It was part of the remake craze.
Well, how about that? Was Robin Williams in that one? Oh, thank God. Okay, well, I've learned something new today.
But yeah, so... I guess we can talk about Ollie's choice to remain in the game and kind of live out his last days, kind of San Junipero style.
I felt that was like a cheap gimmick. Okay, so you had these two former business partners finally come back under the gist that one of them was going to expire.
Well, yeah, and that was his whole point for coming over, though. I mean, I feel like that was well enough executed for a movie like this. I didn't expect it to be like an incredible heart-wrenching drama.
No, you know what? Fair.
I feel like for what it was and for what this movie is, it worked well enough. It was sweet. It was nice. It was a nice way to kind of have this character, who we just met, get a bit of a send off in the game and kind of answer one of the questions: why doesn't someone who's about to die stay? He's like, yeah, fuck yeah, I'll stay.
I do need to be a little more objective because I do have the bias of the original movie here. But all the same, I didn't hate it. I didn't dislike it. I just didn't really feel a whole lot about it because it didn't quite fully capture the original hype or energy of the first movie. But it works. It works.
I feel like if I was going to go away on this, I would kind of draw comparisons to Knives Out a bit for myself, where with Knives Out, I was really frustrated by how simple and straightforward everything was, despite the veneer of being very complicated and like an interconnected web of things.
No, right.
Whereas with this one, it didn't have that facade. It was just a straightforward action comedy, and I enjoyed it for what it was. It wasn't trying to put on airs. It wasn't trying to convince me that it was deeper than it was. It was just having a good time with me, which I appreciate that.
No, and these movies introduce some very interesting, feasible concepts. When I first heard about the 2016 movie, I was actually anticipating it sucking because how could you possibly recapture the brilliance of the original Jumanji with Robin Williams? But sure enough, they pulled it off. They pulled it off twice.
I don't think it's a classic like that. I think that it's good enough for an action comedy. I don't think it gets to be a modern classic.
No, I wouldn't label it as a classic, but more as like it's just a entertaining movie that did not. That
was fine.
It was fine.
Just fine. It's a solid movie, rock solid. It's got a solid rock. It's got a solid cast. It's got a solid script.
Rock. I see what you did there.
It's got everything that you would be expecting of a big budget action comedy, and it's one of the few that doesn't actively disappoint.
Yes, that's the thing. It does not disappoint.
And I find it to be, as far as like the VR kind of transported to another world type movies, one of the best takes on it for like following consistent game rules, for following consistency of things, kind of bringing back some brick jokes from the first, like with the cake stuff.
Right, almost like building up, like you were kind of saying, building up on Ready Player One, where, Player One had the fun little concept, but these movies kind of build upon that, or if not expand upon some of the humorous intricacies of video games.
I've got beef with Ready Player One because it was clear to someone who's never played a video game past the 70s. But that's neither here nor there. I guess we can get into our final overall points and our overall recommendations.
Sure. You go first.
All right. Ultimately, I found Jumanji: The Next Level to be satisfying as an action comedy. The action scenes were handled well enough. And side note here, I just want to kind of jump into this for a moment in the middle of my summary.
Shoot.
I really liked one part of editing where, while they're in like the final area with like the castle, the bad guys, or whatever, they put on the music, they show her like start to kick ass, and then they cut away. And I think that's smart because we don't need to have this drawn out, long fight action scene. We can just get to what's happening and know the basics of what's happening in there.
I'll give you that.
You can save some money on your stunt coordination. It's a good choice to edit it there.
They did that with Kingsman, where they just dragged out all those long fight scenes, or better example, that Keanu Reeves movie. What was it?
Well, John Wick is about those scenes, though.
Yeah.
I think that it'd be most like episode 3, the 45-minute long lava fight. Where you get so fucking tired of it.
No, right. That whole Star Wars episode 3, Revenge of the Sith lava fight that just went on for what, like 10...
45 minutes?
No, not 45.
It probably isn't really, but it feels like it.
It does encompass a good part of the movie.
But seriously, though, if you're looking for one thing to take away from this movie, edit like that. Just get us started on an action scene, tell us where we're going with this scene, and then move us on to the plot. Because the audience will be like, oh, okay, she's probably kicking ass. It's fine. And we don't need to sit there and like just watch them put the story on pause while the action scene plays out.
You know what? Fair. I'll give you that. They just let us know that's happening.
Anyways, sorry.
No, that's fine.
Back to my ultimate summary there. I enjoyed this movie. It was solid. It had good enough writing. It had a good enough story. It had pretty good acting. It had characters that I found fun enough and engaging enough that I was rooting for them. And the general mechanics of the world, the way it works, are all satisfying and all consistent. Ultimately, I would recommend this movie in general. Just like if you have it on Netflix, just toss it on if you're feeling like watching just something mindless. If you're if you're watching on a plane, sure, it's good enough to be an enjoyable time filler. It's not insulting.
No, yeah, time fill that. Now again, I do my review now. I do come in with a little bit of bias because I did enjoy the first movie more, but I was not really dissatisfied with the movie. But the effects and the antics are relatively the same. And better yet, they introduced some new characters. Danny Glover and Danny DeVito are. They bring their charming personalities to the mix. So, yeah, if you enjoyed the first movie, I don't think you'll be too terribly disappointed with this movie. So go and see it.
All right, well, thanks for joining us for the Ramble on. Next week is Cats.
Oh,
it's still better than Star Wars.
Is it though?
Yes.
At least there's Cats is a musical that.
And Star Wars is more Star Wars.
It is. Oh, to me, it's a rockin' hard place.
All right, well, thanks for joining us. I've been Nick.
I've been Brendan. Pray for us.
Stay classy, San Diego.